Somewhere around 9,000 years ago, a human being forgot about a bowl of fruit. They left it out. The sun hit it. Something invisible got inside it. And when that human came back and drank what was left, the world changed. Not because they invented something, because something had already been happening for millions of years without any human's help at all. This is the story of alcohol. Not the bottle, not the bar, the biology. And the story starts not with humans, but with yeast. Yeast is one of the oldest living organisms on Earth. It has been here for at least 80 million years. Its entire existence is built around one goal: find sugar, eat sugar, and convert that sugar into two things: carbon dioxide and ethanol. Ethanol is alcohol, and yeast has been producing it quietly in rotting fruit and fermenting grains for longer than our species has existed, which means alcohol was not invented. It was discovered. It was already there, waiting every time fruit fell from a tree, and some animals figured that out long before we did. The Malaysian pen-tailed tree shrew drinks fermented palm nectar every single night, the equivalent of several beers, and shows no signs of intoxication whatsoever. Some birds deliberately seek out fermented berries. Elephants travel miles specifically to eat fermented fruit that has fallen and begun to rot. The attraction to fermented food is ancient. It is baked into the biology of animals that evolved eating ripe, sugar-rich fruit, because fermentation is just ripeness taken one step further. And ripe meant calories. Calories meant survival, so the brain learned to reward the smell of fermentation. The sweet, slightly sharp smell of ethanol became a signal. Food is here. Calorie-dense food. Eat it. That reward signal is still in your brain right now. It is one of the reasons the smell of certain wines or bread or beer can trigger something that feels almost like hunger. The oldest confirmed evidence of deliberate alcohol production comes from China. Around 9,000 years ago, at a site called Jiahu, archaeologists found clay pots with chemical residue inside them. The residue contained rice, honey, hawthorn fruit, and clear signs of fermentation. Someone had deliberately mixed those ingredients and let them ferment. This was not an accident. This was a recipe. Not long after, similar evidence appears in the Middle East. At a site called Godin Tepe in Iran, 5,000-year-old jars were found with tartaric acid residue, a byproduct of grape fermentation. And in Egypt, royal tombs dating back 5,000 years were stocked with large sealed jars of wine. Not for the living, for the dead. Alcohol was not a casual drink in these early civilizations. It was sacred. It was medicinal. It was given to gods before it was given to ordinary people. The Sumerians, one of the earliest civilizations, had a goddess of beer. Her name was Ninkasi. They wrote hymns to her. The hymn to Ninkasi, written around 1800 BCE, is also, embedded within its verses, a detailed recipe for how to brew beer. They were praising their goddess and writing down their brewing instructions at the same time. The sacred and the practical, inseparable. But why did early humans bother fermenting things at all? The simplest answer is also the most important one. Water was trying to kill them. In the ancient world, drinking untreated water from rivers, lakes, or communal wells was one of the fastest ways to get sick and die. Fermentation changed that. The alcohol produced during fermentation kills most of the bacteria that make water dangerous. Beer, wine, and fermented drinks were not recreational choices in the ancient world. They were safer than the alternative. They were hydration that did not kill you. Egyptian pyramid workers were given beer as part of their daily rations. Not as a treat, as a nutritional requirement. Beer in the ancient world was thick, nutritious, full of B vitamins and calories from the grain. It was closer to a liquid meal than what we think of as beer today, and it was consumed by everyone. Men, women, children. The idea that alcohol was exclusively an adult activity is entirely modern. There is also a theory, controversial but serious, called the drunken monkey hypothesis. Proposed by biologist Robert Dudley, it argues that our attraction to alcohol is not a cultural habit. It is an evolutionary inheritance from primate ancestors who survived by finding the most calorie-rich food, and fermented overripe fruit, identifiable by its ethanol smell, was the jackpot. The densest calories available in the wild, so we did not develop a taste for alcohol. We inherited a taste for what alcohol smells like. The taste came with the package. The hypothesis is still debated. But what is not debated is this. Humans have a genetic variant that other primates largely do not. Have a variant of the gene ADH4 that makes us dramatically more efficient at metabolizing ethanol than most other primates. This mutation appeared approximately 10 million years ago in a common ancestor of humans, chimpanzees, and gorillas. At the same time, the forests were shrinking. Our ancestors were spending more time on the ground, eating fallen fruit. Fallen fruit ferments faster than fruit on the tree. The ability to process ethanol efficiently, to eat slightly fermented fruit without getting sick, was suddenly a survival advantage. Our bodies were adapted to handle alcohol before we even knew what it was, before we ever deliberately made it. When humans finally started making fermented drinks deliberately, around 9,000 years ago, they were not doing something new. They were doing something ancient, on purpose. And when agriculture appeared, when humans began farming grain in large quantities, alcohol production scaled with it. There is actually a theory that agriculture itself, the entire foundation of civilization, may have been partly motivated by the desire to produce grain for fermentation. The theory is called the beer before bread hypothesis. It suggests that early humans may have planted grain not primarily to eat, but to brew. The evidence is not conclusive, but the timing is interesting. The earliest known settlements appear near the earliest known fermentation sites, whether they farmed to drink or drank because they farmed. Alcohol and civilization have been inseparable since before history began. Alcohol appeared in religious ceremonies, in trade, in medicine, in diplomacy, in almost every significant human activity from the moment civilization began. Greek physicians used wine as an antiseptic to clean wounds. Roman soldiers were given a sour wine called pasca to keep them hydrated and prevent infection. In medieval Europe, monks were the primary producers of beer and wine, and they were also the primary healers. The brewery and the infirmary were in the same building. The idea that alcohol is purely a recreational or social drug is almost entirely modern. For most of human history, it was infrastructure. And then something changed. Distillation. Somewhere around the 8th or 9th century, Arab scholars refined the process of distillation, heating fermented liquid to extract and concentrate the alcohol. The word alcohol itself comes from Arabic. Alcohol, originally referring to a fine powder used as eye makeup, later applied to the essence extracted by distillation. Distillation changed everything. Fermented drinks top out at around 15% alcohol. Distilled spirits can reach 95%. The same biology that evolved to handle slightly fermented fruit was suddenly dealing with concentrations it had never encountered in nature. And it showed. Alcoholism, as a recognized social and medical problem, scales almost perfectly with the introduction of distilled spirits into any culture. In England, the gin craze of the 1700s saw an entire working-class population consuming gin in quantities that collapsed life expectancy and productivity. The body had spent 10 million years adapting to handle trace amounts of ethanol in overripe fruit. It had not spent any time preparing for a shot glass. But here is what makes this story genuinely strange. Even knowing all of this, the biology, the history, the risks, humans have never stopped. Every culture that has ever existed on Earth has independently discovered fermentation. Every single one. The specific drink varies. Grape wine in the Mediterranean, rice wine in Asia, chicha, fermented maize, in South America, mead, fermented honey, nearly everywhere. But the underlying process is always the same. Sugar plus yeast plus time equals ethanol. The formula has never changed. What does change is what humans do with it afterward. And that story, across cultures and centuries, reveals something about us that goes far beyond drinking. Alcohol lowers inhibition, not by adding something to the brain, but by suppressing the part of it that monitors and controls social behavior. The result is that people say things they would not otherwise say, share things they would not otherwise share, trust people they would not otherwise trust. In small social groups, in the kind of tribe that early humans lived in, this had real value. It accelerated bonding. It reduced suspicion between strangers. Anthropologists who study living hunter-gatherer societies note that shared drinking is almost always tied to important social moments, agreements, alliances, rituals. The word toast, raising a glass before drinking, is found in nearly every culture. Different words, same gesture, same meaning. We were not just drinking together. We were performing trust. We were saying, I will lower my guard in front of you. That is not a small thing, which brings us to the part of this story nobody usually includes. The reason humans have never been able to simply stop, even when they try, is not weakness. It is because the attraction to fermented substances is older than the human brain's capacity to resist it. The pull existed before the resistance did. That does not excuse anything. It does not make addiction less real or less devastating. It simply locates the problem correctly. The problem is not a moral failure. It is a mismatch. A biology built for a world of occasional fermented fruit dropped into a world of 24-hour liquor stores. Your body handles alcohol the same way it handled it 10 million years ago. The world around it is just 10 million years newer, and so we arrive back at the beginning. At a clay bowl, at forgotten fruit, at something invisible getting inside it. The human who came back and drank what was left did not change the world by being clever. They changed it by being curious, by trying something they had never tried before. That curiosity, that willingness to try the unfamiliar thing, is the same impulse that built every civilization that followed. The yeast did not know what it was starting. The human did not know what they were starting. And yet, here we are, 9,000 years later, in a world built, in part, on a bowl of forgotten fruit and the invisible life that found it first.